sports. This is Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Grizzly Insider here on the Montana Television Network. Alongside the voice of the Grizz, Riley Corcoran, I'm Kyle Hansen, and we are here to recap the season that was for the Montana Grizzlies. And Riley, what a run it was to the FCS National Championship. What a season, what a game, and this was just special to be a part of.
It was, Kyle, from the moment that fall camp started to August, for all of us to be on this journey that the players and the coaching staff took us on. Pretty amazing. And now, especially on this show and the weeks that are going to follow, it's great to reminisce and to go back down memory lane, which we're going to do here in the next half hour. But first off, before we get into the game or anything, just a sincere thanks to everybody that has certainly followed along and to the players for everything that they were able to give us, because it was a ride that was 14 years in the making, as we've said a couple of times.
Absolutely, and you're spot on, right? We can't do it without the viewers, without those helping us with the interviews. It was a lot of fun to tell those stories as we went along. And now let's pivot to the game itself. I mean, what a game it was, right? That first half especially, Montana toe-to-toe with the best team in the country, 29 straight wins for South Dakota State. And early on, I mean, the Grizz showed their mettle. I mean, first of all, I've never seen a first quarter like that, right? Just two drives. I mean, that was fascinating, but it showed what these teams are made of, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Long drives, and you look at it that I've never had a quarter with just one timeout in the entirety of it. And we didn't even have two full drives before the first quarter was over with. And you're right, that game, for 2.5 quarters, it was neck and neck. Yeah. And absolutely, South Dakota State was on their heels. The Grizzly defense, now you're going to look at this at the end of it, say, okay, 23-3 was the final score, but there's a couple turnovers that aided points for South Dakota State. The Jackrabbits were far under their season average. I thought it really was a defensive game. Montana's offense had a couple of windows, right? And it's going to be tough to look back on, I'm sure, for the players and the coaching staff, but there were a couple windows that they could have pounced on, right? And those opportunities were certainly there, but the Grizz were in it, and I even think all the way until that fumble mid-stages of the third quarter.
Absolutely. Well, especially that second quarter, right? The goal line stand was huge, and obviously, but to respond and get the pick from Corbin Walker, set them up, get points on the board, right? And then show that they could respond with adversity. And like you said, kept South Dakota State's offense in check. They weren't able to move the ball very much, forced the turnover on special teams, and then, but like you said, the fumble in the third quarter felt like things snowballed a little bit. And with South Dakota State, the thing I noticed is, like, once they got rolling, they were just tough to stop.
They were, and I think that we talked about it on this show, and a lot of folks down there were saying the same thing, that the moment somebody got up 2 scores, the feeling of that game drastically changed. And I felt that even in the broadcast booth. I'm sure you did down on the field, that once the Jackrabbits went up 14-3, you just felt it tightening up a little bit, right? Where Montana's offense was a little bit one-dimensional, and that's where you have to give South Dakota State a ton of credit. They took away the running game. The fact that no Grizzly ball carrier had more than 20 yards rushing, that to me is probably the stat that tells the story. But absolutely, they say it's a game of interest, and sometimes we love going into cliches, but my goodness, that fourth down and goal play where Eli Gilman was short by literally 1 inch would have flipped the entire script on it. But South Dakota State, historic defense, 15 games they played in, they allowed 15 total touchdowns, and again, the Grizz had an opportunity or two.
And to their credit too, they settled in as well, right? Because Montana had that 15-play drive out of the gates, and when they've done that to other teams that you see the breakdown wills, you see them kind of enforce their will on other teams, and South Dakota State stood tall right there, and that was big for them. And it felt like Montana, even when they stopped the snowball effect, was still kind of in it a little bit, right? That I think it was 4th and 18 that McDowell hit Osmo on, and you're kind of like, well, there's a little bit of life here and some movement, and obviously later they were stopped. But Montana didn't quit, and that was the biggest thing I thought down the stretch, even though South Dakota State had it, towards the end.
Yeah, they absolutely did. I mean, it was a stretch of like 8 minutes where South Dakota State was able to stretch that 7-3 lead to 23. Outside of that, I thought the Grizz were right there, played toe-to-toe with them the entirety of it. There's a reason. South Dakota State, 7 All-Americans on offense, and there'll be a lot of guys playing on Sunday that we saw on the field in Frisco.
Absolutely. But we'll recap the season here that was for the Grizzlies. And coming up next, senior linebacker Levi Janacaro will join Riley and me next on the Grizz Insider.
Welcome back to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
And welcome back to the Grizz Insider, the final football show of the year. And because it's the final football show, we're doing something special. 3-man booth up here, Kyle Hansen. Pleased to be joined by Mr. 37, Levi Janacaro. Thanks for being here first off, Levi.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. We're going to go a couple different angles here in the next couple of minutes and talk about your amazing career, the journey that it's been. But we got to start with the game itself. What was it like for a Missoula kid to be playing in a national championship game? Just take me through some of the feels and the emotions. Is the lead up to the game, Levi, and then also the game itself?
Getting down to to Texas a couple days in advance before the game to get acclimated to the environment, and to practice there, and just to do all the fun things that we got to do and hang out with your buddies in the hotel and just around the town. Go to Riley's house, go to his barn, and have a meal there. The whole experience was fantastic. And then the game itself, it didn't really like kick in that we were in the Natty until like you put the pads on and you went out to like warm up, and you were out there and you were like, man, like we're one of 4 teams that are playing. And granted, it would have been a lot better of an experience if we had won. Nonetheless, it was a once in a lifetime thing that I'm grateful for.
Can you walk us through that first half, right? Because obviously the talk in the lead was South Dakota State, right? 28 straight games, the reigning national champions. Everybody, I think you guys were a 2-touchdown underdog. Like everybody, really no one gave you a chance.
No.
And you guys were toe-to-toe with them the entire time. They have that opening drive where they're able to score, but then from then on you shut their offense down, one of the best offenses in the country. Just walk us through from your perspective, what was it like settling into that game?
First of all, that first drive was the longest drive that I've been a part of in my life. They had one drive and we had one drive, and the quarter was over. It was nuts. I don't know, they were a good team, but I think that we were well prepared on defense. I really liked our game plan that we'd been practicing for 2 weeks and leading up to the game. I just think that we were dialed in, we were ready to go, and I don't really think that we were rusty from not playing for 3 weeks or anything. I think that our guys were mature enough to know that this was the last game of the season, that everything was on the line, and they had to be ready to go, and I think that we were, but South Dakota State was just a good team. Like you said, they've won 29 in a row, but I don't really think that we thought into that a whole lot. You know, we didn't think they were Goliath. You know, they were just another team that had to play us. You know, I think the score doesn't reflect how good of a game that it really was. I kind of thought it was a battle for almost the entirety of the game. Besides the last 5 or so minutes in the fourth, I thought we played them really hard, and kudos to them for doing what they had to do to beat us. But I think that we played them a lot better than the score would indicate.
Well, absolutely. You hold them 15 points under their season average, over 100 yards less than what they normally average as well. So the defense certainly did their job. Let's go back to front on this, Levi, because this playoff run and what you guys did in the back half of the season, I mean, you're going to bring joy to so many people for a long time, going back and reminiscing to someone growing up watching the Grizz. I mean, it had to be so surreal. Take me through the North Dakota State game, Furman, the rivalry game, the blowout, and just progressively how you guys became such a dominant group and having so many historic and signature wins. What was the ride like all the way up to the national championship?
I mean, it was like nothing that I've been a part of in any of my years of being an athlete. I mean, at the beginning of the season, we weren't picked all that high in the conference or in the country, and we didn't really buy into that a whole lot, but a lot of the media did, and fans, especially after the first 4 or so weeks when we weren't playing too hot, and lose to NAU, which I think that loss really shaped us into the team that we were. I kind of think that if we didn't lose in Arizona, then we wouldn't have been playing in Texas, because I think that was kind of the kick in the butt that we needed to show the young guys that you're not going to win just because you're the Grizzlies, that you still have to show up and put in work, just work your butt off to make sure that you can go 1-0 throughout each week of the season. And I think that we bought into improving week by week and not looking towards the end of the season, towards a rivalry game, towards playoffs or anything, just focusing on the opponent that we had in any given week and focusing on how we can improve to beat them. And then that continued throughout the season, and it compounded to where we were able to blow some teams out, win some close ones, and play in the Natty. And I think the beginning of the season, you know, we had a lot of close games where we had to gut them out, where it wasn't pretty at all. Then towards the later half of the regular season, we start to put it on some teams and win by a couple of touchdowns, and whole teams do a touchdown or two, and then the playoffs come, and Delaware was closer than the score would indicate too. I think they played us well. And then Furman and NDSU, I mean, 2 overtime games that really kind of tested us, but I think that we were just such a battle-tested team that we had been through it in the beginning of the season, and we knew what it takes to win those close games, those dog fights, and so we pulled them out. And then the Natty, I don't know, I mean, the season as a whole was just so much fun. Like, more so the guys that you were doing it with. I love the dudes on our team. I mean, I'm biased, but I do think that we have the best locker room in America. I'm just super excited to watch these guys this next year, you know, the brothers that I've made to watch them and cheer them on. Yeah.
It's great. You chronicled the season pretty perfectly, Kyle.
Absolutely. And so, and to add on to that, talk about the senior class, right? Because you talk about the buy-in, the grit, just showing, hey, you have to work to get to this point, which I felt like defined all of you, right? I mean, you look at the linebackers, the safeties, AJ Forbes, guys like that, and just what was it like being a part of that group where it just seemed like focus, determination, that was kind of your MO, this really all of your careers?
Again, I'm biased, but I'm not sure that there will ever be a senior class like this one again. I just think that we really weren't the most talented group of seniors as far as football players go, but across the board we just had guys that worked their butts off, that put their noses down and grinded when they had to. We had guys that led, not all the time vocally, but by how we did things. We learned that from the older guys that came before us, and we got to watch them. We took that in, and we were able to reproduce that and lead by example, by doing things the right way. You got to do the little things right. That's what Coach Houck says too. We bought into what he told us, and the young guys, they bought into how we did things, and I'm just grateful for the group of seniors that I got to do it with, because they pushed me to be better each and every day. I think that our senior class was a huge part of our success.
I would agree with that, Levi, and I, on behalf of everybody here and everyone that has followed this run, we want to say thank you to you of how you embody Grizzly football, wearing 37 with the pride and passion that everyone else is along the line, and you've done an amazing job representing Grizzly football. And so on behalf of all of us, thank you for what you've done in a Grizzly uniform. Thanks for this amazing ride.
It's a pleasure of my life. It's a pleasure of my life.
Absolutely. We'll continue on in the Grizzly Insider on the other side of the break.
Welcome back to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
And welcome back to the Grizz Insider. Riley, what a conversation with Levi Janacaro right there. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Just those guys, the season they put together, and and he hit it nail on the head. Special season, and I think those guys deserve it.
Absolutely. Just an amazing individual, number one, and thanks to Levi for being so candid and honest about going through the entire season. And we have so much respect, Kyle, for that senior class, just because of how they are as people and how they embodied being a Montana Grizzly on the football field.
Absolutely. For a couple of guys, you and me, we grew up in Montana, right? We grew up watching these legendary Grizz games, that some of which we've recapped on this show, and it was kind of our turn to cover some this year, right? It's been kind of fun to reflect on the season a little bit and what this run was like, and what kind of stands out in your mind from what this season held.
Oh, it's so true, Kyle. I mean, we grew up watching the game of '09, right, with Mark Mariani. Everyone still talks about that to this day. Dave Dickinson's first start back in 1993. Good to chronicle some of those games, and now the games this year are going to go down in Grizzly history. The North Dakota State game and the Furman game for sure, but I want to go back even a bit further than that, I should say. That Idaho game. That Idaho game, to me, flipped the expectations for everybody, right? I mean, the Grizz go beat UC Davis. There's no Lan Larison in that game, so you're thinking, okay, a good win, but are they still a contender, right? Well, Montana threw a haymaker in Moscow on national TV against the number 3 team in the country. From there, they became a dominant team, and I think the bye week came at the perfect time, because after that, floodgates were open. 4 straight games after that, complete blowouts after that. What stands out for you?
I agree with you in Idaho, right? Because that's when it became a believer, it became real, right? But for me, another one was Sacramento State, right? Because Sacramento State comes in top 10, and they'd obviously had the Grizzlies number the last few years with a different coach, different players, and things like that. But you still wondered, right? And they got the Grizzlies here in Missoula a couple years ago, and so you look at that game coming in, but to blow them out the way they did, because when they did that to me was when they became a contender, and that is when I thought, they might be able to also beat Montana State the way they did, just because they showed that they were kind of hitting their stride at the right time. And then obviously the Brawl, the Wild, the playoff run. I mean, this playoff run will stand out forever. There's no doubt about it.
It will. And 9-0 at home, I think we felt the magic of Grizz football. I don't know, magical, right? There's a lot of cliches that you can say, but the magic inside Washington Grizzly Stadium came back alive this year. And I'm getting chills even saying that, because you remember some of the moments when Junior Bergen made that cut against Furman to open up that game. From there, that game just went on a different level. I mean, as far as the intensity of it. Then North Dakota State, all-time clash. I mean, college football, you're talking with a lot of people around the country, right? In my travels and your travels, you hear it, where there's some innocent bystanders going, that is what college football is all about. And these Montana Grizzlies delivered so many special moments for us throughout the course of the season.
And the setting, right? Because the Delaware game, snow game at night, and then night game against Furman, which we always talk about the magic of those games. And then obviously the heavyweight clash that transitioned into the evening against North Dakota State that led to the national championship. It had the makings of all of that and just a really magical season.
It did, Kyle, and I think that the phrase "the stars aligned" for the Montana Grizzlies, right? And not only for the team out there, all of the fans that followed along this ride, and for guys like us that were able to be lucky enough to get a front row seat and to get a peek behind the curtain to see guys like Levi Janacaro have that kind of success and to follow their careers. It just all came together as one, and certainly I know that we didn't take it for granted.
Absolutely. It's been a very special run, absolutely. And in the next segment, we'll go ahead and take a look at what's next for the Montana Grizzlies. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Take coverage of the Grizz with you. Download our app for your favorite mobile device today. Welcome back to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
Well, this season has certainly been special, Kyle, but now we have to start talking about the future, as hard as that is to believe. But when you look at this Grizzly roster, right, the day and age of the transfer portal and everybody leaving, coming back, the question marks back and forth, what we do know is that there have been some high-profile Grizzlies that say they are coming back already, and there's a possibility of 10 returning starters on offense. The future is certainly bright.
This offense could be deadly next year, right, with all these guys back. And obviously, there's always fluctuation with the transfer portal, that last-minute open window. But as you mentioned, 10 guys could be back, which includes Cannon Pamphilov, who has rotated as a starter at left tackle and left guard. Huge pickup from them from Utah Tech this past year. And what a player he has been. So obviously, they're going to lose key leader, key impact player in A.J. Forbes and Chris Walker. But everybody else, the skills players, Aaron Fonts, Junior Bergen, Keelan White, Evan Schaefer at tight end, the rest of the linemen, and then Eli Gilman, they're all going to be back. And so that's dangerous. Defense will be interesting, right, to see who fills these roles, maybe what they pick up in the transfer portal, who kind of steps up, because they lose, obviously, 3 guys in Nash Fouch, Trajan Cotton, and Garrett Graves, who started a lot of games. The 3 linebackers, Alex Gubner, what a guy to replace there. Corbin Walker as well. And so defense will be interesting to see who steps up. But, you have to like what they bring back. And they seem to always find these guys, right? You think of the Riley Wilsons, the Pamphilofs they found in the portal, and I'm sure they'll find a few more this year.
I think they will. And, Kyle, you look at the strength in numbers for this Grizzly team, right? You've seen that with 5 safeties rotating in, that yes, you might lose 2 to 3, but you feel good that those other guys at least had experience, especially at the linebacking core. The biggest one's going to be trying replacing Alex Gubner. I have a lot of confidence, though, that linebacker U is going to be able to produce some more. Riley Wilson, Ryan Tyrrell obviously got some starts this year. There's some couple guys waiting in the wings as well. When we talk about next season, the schedule is also intriguing, because the Grizzlies will play 12 games next year. 7 of them will be at home. A little bit advantageous when you take an early peek.
Yes, and you look at, like you mentioned, 7 games at home, only 1 road non-conference game against North Dakota, who was a playoff team, and they're always game, so that's going to be a big game. But then it's a pretty nice schedule. You get Weber at home. You're at Eastern Washington, who's had some struggles the last couple of years. You're going to be at Montana State, which will be a difficult game. But then some of these other games, you're going to see the Northern Arizonas at home in a revenge game, and you're going to be at Northern Colorado, at Cal Poly. It's a pretty favorable schedule when you look at it on paper.
It really is. The Grizzlies have the 4th longest home winning streak in the FCS. I feel the Grizz are going to be a favorite and confident every time they play at Washington Grizzly Stadium, so you really key in on those road games. You're right on North Dakota. Obviously, the rivalry game is going to be tough, but the conference road games of Eastern Washington, Northern Colorado, and Cal Poly, now everything can change, but that's very advantageous when looking at these Grizzlies. Final note, at least on this side of things, Kyle, a lot of comparisons to 2000, 2001. What happened there? Grizzlies fell in the national title in 2000, and we all know what happened in 2001.
You look at this year, and it could be a springboard to next year, right? That's what this is all about. They've now been there. They've tasted Frisco, finally. They've seen what it's like. They've seen the routine, which is what Joe Glenn's message was to them in 2001. You've been here before. Now go and take it. And I have a feeling, I think next fall, that's going to be the message again.
Can we get to August 31st already?
Let's take a little bit of a break.
Okay.
Let's take a little bit of a break, but then absolutely, I'm fired up. They're going to be fun, man. If they're anything like they were this year, next year is going to be it's going to be as special as this year.
Season opener will be August 31st against Missouri State. We'll wrap things up on the other side of the break here on the Grizz Insider.
Welcome back to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
And welcome back to the Grizz Insider. And Riley, it's been so much fun doing this show with you throughout the years. We've cataloged the entire season, so many people to thank, so many memories, and just what a season it was for Grizz football. But it's not our last one, as we've got some basketball talk coming up as well.
Absolutely, and thanks to you. It's been awesome being on this ride with you, Greg, who really is our MVP back in the studio. It has been awesome, and I think that this season has been magical for a couple of Montanans to be able to sit in this chair and do it. And yes, we will be back with basketball, but I'm sure glad that we were able to put a bow on this football season.
Absolutely. And as we say goodbye to football season, we also say goodbye to a Grizzly legend and Papa Bear Don Reed, who was an architect of Grizzly football, who meant so many to so many people, and his legacy will never be forgotten. Thanks so much for watching.